Okay, welcome everybody to the Eternal Spoiler Breakdown. My name is Pojo, and today we're going to be talking about all of the new spoilers that came out today, as well as something cool. There have been draft packs announced for the upcoming draft format Fall of Argenport, and this is something that we knew about, knew that was going to happen, but we have now gotten to see the lists on the packs. So what's going on is, in Fall of Argenport, we are doing a different draft system. And the draft system is going to be fairly similar to what we saw in, say, Omens of the Past, where instead of doing one pack, 2 packs of the current set, and then 1 pack of a set 2 and 1 pack of set 1, we are doing 2 packs of the current set, Fall of Argenport, and then we are doing 2 curated packs, which are going to be packs that have access to a wide variety of cards that are specially curated by the developers to make for better draft experiences. And these will contain a mix of set 1 and set 2 cards, or set 2 and set 3 cards? Set 1, 2, and 3 cards, rather. Goodness gracious, yes. So we will have set 4 plus set special packs that contain set 1, 2, and 3 cards. And so the way that that works is that they will contain basically every legendary, I believe, from the current sets, with a couple of exceptions. And this one's actually really cool. This is one of the things that I really like about these packs. So they have limited commons and uncommons, and there are some things going in where, like, basically we don't see any strangers anymore. The strangers are completely out, so we don't have those fixers. There is a new setup where, like, so, like, there's going to be some, like, pretty high synergy cards together. Some of the more degenerate cards have been taken out. Cards that tend to take away a game when they are played in a particular fashion, I think, have been kind of nixed quite a bit. I know that False Prince didn't make it anymore. I know that Fishing Dynok is out. So cards that get like a ton of stats very early, there's a couple of those that might that can run away with a game that have since been taken out. So I think overall, when I was looking at the list, I thought that the patterns that it was promoting looked really, really good. Like, these look like they have been pretty well tested, and they're going to lead to really fun and interactive draft experiences, which is exactly what you want. So I'm feeling pretty good about that. We're not saying there's no fixers, but we do not have strangers. So there's probably going to be new fixers in set 4. We'll see exactly what ends up happening, but we also do have access to the crests and the banners and all of that standard stuff as well. So yeah, the cool thing about this is, one cool thing about this, which I really like from a lore perspective and a gameplay mechanics perspective, is that in terms of legendaries, almost everything is there, with the exception of a couple of cards from particular setups. So, for example, any card that already has a new replacement, like, for example, Caleb, the Uncrowned Prince, has been replaced by Caleb Reborn, his latest incarnation. So older versions of the Scions are not in the list, and that includes Caleb, Uncrowned Prince, Talir, who sees beyond, Eileen, Queen of the Wilds, who has, of course, Eileen Clan Mother, and Talir has Talir Unbound, and also the new Vara is missing, which I think confirms the fact that there's going to be a new Vara in Fall of Argenport, and we should be seeing some kind of setup, because the old Vara is not in the draft packs. The other thing that is missing from the draft packs is Roland, and Roland is gone. And not only is Roland gone, all of Roland's choices, favors, and interventions are gone, because Roland, as it turns out, is dead. I like that a lot. I'm really, really delighted by that. Like, I think that's just a really cool thing that they've done. I will note that Ikaria is still in the packs, or at least appears to still be in the packs, so maybe they decided to keep her as a pretty staple legendary. She's a lot of fun to get, and like, most people want to get her, so I imagine that was a gameplay versus mechanics decision. But I'm still pretty delighted by Roland's permadeath in the set, just being acknowledged in that whole setup. So yeah, dead characters are not in the packs, but everybody else is, and anyone who had a new card has that new card in the packs. But it does look like pretty much all of the legendaries are in there, so other than that, that should be pretty cool. All right, so that's the basic idea behind the draft packs. We're just going to be seeing basically 2 and 2 again, which in Omens of the Past was actually pretty decent fun. Omens didn't have as great synergy with set 1 and set 3 as set 1 and set 3 have with each other. So I think we're looking at a pretty good draft environment for the next set. Set 3 was fascinating, and we've really started to get the hang of it. We're actually like top 50 in Master right now, but it took a while, and it is a hard set to draft with not a lot of easy lines to follow. In set 4, there's going to be a much better tribal focus, because we're going to see, of course, like there's been a lot of new cards released in the tribes, and also most of the good tribal cards have stayed in. So anything like gunslingers and any sort of like Valkyries, all of that kind of stuff, like the stuff that set 3 really supports is still going to be in there, as well as like most of set 1's good gunslingers and other stuff. So yeah, we should see quite a decent amount of stuff there. I don't think I saw that many mentor cards. I'd have to check it again, but like it looks like for the most part like we're going to see some interesting patterns, and I'm pretty excited to see how the whole setup works. We're going to be talking about draft a lot more. I will be doing some videos talking about draft in the future, probably after the Eternal Basics have released and we are back from our vacation, but we will certainly be trying to get a handle on the new draft format as Fall of Ours Report releases this week, and I will be gone next week, but I will still be playing Eternal on my phone and possibly trying to stream it over a limited Wi-Fi hotspot, so we're going to be seeing. In any case, that's the news on the draft packs. We also have some spoilers to break down, and the first of which is Ancient of the Ice Caves, and that is the first alphabetically, but still the first. So Ancient of the Ice Caves is an Overwhelm 4/4/4/4 in double blue, double purple, and has ultimate pay 8 to make each player discard their hand and draw 8 cards. This is an unusual one. I like it because it is Feln Tempo. There is a Feln Tempo archetype that hasn't seen as much play, but it's really looking like it's probably going to come back with the advent of not only a tribe of elves, which seem to be pretty typically fairly cheaply costed, but also a couple of cards like Ancient of the Ice Caves, where you have like a decent amount of stats on a good Feln card that the main requirement is that he just needs a lot of influence. And that's sort of the same thing that happens with like Midnight Gale and a couple of other sort of aggressive Feln cards that actually do quite a bit of damage and can be very, very sort of slippery by being aerial creatures. So Ancient of the Ice Caves looks like it could be a Feln Tempo card, primarily because that Overwhelm is very strong, and the ultimate ability is extremely good if you are just trying to draw a lot of cards, or trying to play out all of your cards and then do something in the end to get yourself some new stuff, and also force your opponent's answers to pop out of his hand. The other thing about Ancient of the Ice Caves is that since he makes the enemy player discard their hand and draw 8 cards, he's really interesting against control matchups, because a lot of control matchups like to have face Aegises, and Ancient of the Ice Caves makes a face Aegis a really bad idea. If your opponent has an Aegis on their face, then the ultimate triggers, you draw the 8 cards and discard your hand, and your opponent's hand remains completely untouched, but his Aegis pops. So there's potential for insane card advantage if your opponent plays wrong into Ancient of the Ice Caves, and how to correctly play into Ancient of the Ice Caves is a really interesting question. So this card is really weird. I'm not sure if I like it, just because of the way that ultimate works. It seems a little bit strange, but overall, like, it could be cool, and I love seeing Feln Tempo as an archetype, so I'm fairly down with this. In draft, it is okay. It's a 4/4 Overwhelm. The ultimate is amazing. You're probably going to stick the ultimate, and the question then becomes, like, does making your opponent draw 8 cards kill you? Because they're going to get one chance to play those 8 cards before bad things happen. So, alright. Vanish Dumperon. 3-cost 2/3. Once per turn, you may pay 5 to make a player discard the top 2 cards of their deck. So this one's pretty straightforward, common, doesn't do a lot. It kind of has some mild shenanigans going on with it. I'd say this is kind of an interesting draft mill strat, where if you want to play really defensive, you can just sort of sit on your heels, and then every once in a while you pay 5. Your opponent's deck gets a little smaller. This is kind of a win con in that respect. The card is not very good on its own, and so overall it's possible that it's not going to do a lot, but I don't know. Like, that is potentially a pretty good draft strategy, so if you want to play like a weird defensive mill deck, this might be okay. There is a lot of things that you can do in Shadow to keep yourself alive. There's even a new removal spell that you can work with, but the problem is that Vanish Dumperon is not putting your opponent on any sort of scary clock, so I think overall this card probably doesn't play very well in either ranked or draft. It's pretty poorly statted, it's kind of defensive, which is nice, it's easy to kill if you really are running into trouble with it. The main thing about it is that like that discard of 2 cards from their deck is, it's okay. You can also use it to enable your own like sort of dredge strategies, and that's actually even probably a better use of Vanish Dumperon. I'm just not sure how good that's gonna be. It allows you to trigger Tribute, but as a card that costs 5, that's potentially not that great. It can also allow you to trigger things like Ephemeral Wisp or anything like off the top of your deck that you really want to run with. Overall, this card looks real awkward. It's fine as a common, and you're probably okay with picking it up and putting it into a Shadow deck that's heavy on control, provided that Shadow deck is in draft. Alright, Changey Stick. This one's pretty cute. Mostly because it's, I think, our first Yeti weapon ever, and it's just the stick. So the stick gives flying, and also has Spellcraft of 4, play Polymorph. Polymorph, if you don't know, is a 3-cost blue spell that turns a unit into a 1/1 frog. Overall, I think this card's pretty strong. So Elder's Feather was actually just kind of a beat stick for the majority of set 1, when it was a 1/1 for 1 that just gave flying. And this is the first weapon that we have gotten along those veins that actually gives flying and that extra bonus to stats. It costs a little bit more, but it's also got a really good upside where you can play it at a later turn to not only nix some card that really sucks, like a Sandstorm Titan is definitely the one, but also just you can do some pretty cool things with it in terms of the aggression that you want to run. So I can see this belonging in some sort of Rakano Blue type deck where you're playing a lot of Warcries and you're doing this sort of interesting Elder's Feather style strategy. That way, like, you have just like a really good sort of top end that also happens to knock down Sandstorm Titans on top of your Vanquishes and other things. So if you're playing like 3-color Rakano stuff, which you could maybe do with crests and other options, that could be kind of cool. Yeah, or you could play this in Skycrag. It seems like an okay way to get like a lot of things across. This seems like a very playable common in both ranked and limited. In limited, it's bonkers. This card is just going to win a lot of games because it is giving you the evasion that you need on units that should not have evasion, Aegis units, units with lots of stats, units that are just kind of disgusting in general, and it's also got the ability to knock something out at 6, which is also just really, really good for a top deck in limited. So yeah, this is a high-end common. You want to pick it in limited, and ranked is looking pretty good. I like the art, I like the design. Cut Ties. Okay. 6-cost fast spell, kill an enemy unit. So it's a Death Strike at 2 more, but less influence cost, and it's monocolored. So you don't have to be... I mean, Death Strike is also monocolored, but... yeah, I'd say the less influence cost doesn't make the card better. You're obviously going to play Death Strike in pretty much every other situation. Like, it's possible that you could splash a Cut Ties in ranked, but this is definitely a draft common. And the idea behind it is that it's going to give you a pretty good trick. Cut Ties kills an enemy unit at fast spell speed. That can often turn into a 2-for-1. At the very least, it is a 1-for-1. That's reasonably strong. It is very expensive, and it does not do anything on a tempo efficient level. So overall, this card might be a little difficult to run with, but removal is removal. Removal is pretty good in draft. I would say that you pick this fairly highly, if not, yeah, you don't pick it extremely highly, but it's above average, it's fairly okay, and it's probably going to encourage you to play more controlling strategies in purple, which, yeah, purple is, like, I want more control strategies in draft. I want that to always be an option, so I'm okay with Cut Ties. Doesn't really do anything in ranked. You just run Death Strike. Factory Quota. Players can't gain health at the end of each player's turn. If they didn't play a unit, deal 2 damage to them. This is a relic for 3. It's in fire. Okay, so this definitely gives you inevitability. Prevents the life gain, which means that your opponents are basically going to slowly burn to death. And it also punishes people for being control decks without units. It's pretty expensive. It doesn't do anything on board, so it's really kind of only good against those types of decks. But like overall, this does just slowly kill the Temporal Distortion Channel the Tempest deck. So if you have maybe, man, the fact that you can't gain health off of this means that you can't even like sit back against Channel the Tempest and really like sort of stop that type of control deck. So against unitless control, I'm not sure that this is a card you really want to play, which makes it kind of irrelevant as far as things go. Like, I don't know that you play this card in ranked. In limited, you get to slowly kill your opponent with a mild little Benny that does some tiny amounts of damage. This is okay to play at 3. You don't feel too bad about it. It's okay to play in most situations as long as you're not behind on board. And if you are even or ahead on board, then you can play a factory quota and you can then just get control of the board and factory quota will slowly kill them. So that seems reasonable and probably okay, but the main answer to this card is for an opponent to play units, and your opponent is usually playing units. So I don't know that this card is particularly effective in any format, but I do see it as some sort of way to control the board a little bit more and potentially disallow some interesting strategies. So yeah, there's a really mean purple-red deck that just kind of hates on you with Factory Quota. I don't think that deck is good. Hot Blood Barbarian, 2/1 Berserk. Alright, Eternal Basics #1 is coming out in, I think, July 1st? Or yeah, possibly July 1st. I haven't figured the exact schedule out yet, but it's going to be out while we're out on vacation. And one of the things that we are using is a 2-cost common or a 2-cost uncommon called Bladekin Apprentice. And Hot Blood Barbarian would be a pretty good substitute for that if you wanted to do that, because Hot Blood Barbarian can discard power cards to make a temper, and is also just a fairly aggressive 2/1 that gets the ability to deal double damage once. Those are all good things in a red common. Like, this is a card that is just fairly aggressive and does an awful lot early on. That means that it's safer against Hailstorm than most other types of decks because you just get so much value out of it early that you're feeling pretty okay about it. Yeah, I would say that, like, as an aggressive 2-drop, this looks like a viable strategy that we could actually do quite a bit with. You can run Pummel into this, and then you can just blow out your opponent very, very quickly. Like, straight aggro will run Hot Blood Barbarian if you are going to be doing sort of mono fire or something with Stone Scar. I expected to see some sort of aggressive red Berserk card, and this is a pretty good iteration on that. I really like that the summon effect is something that's a little bit weird and wibbly and doesn't support the Berserk strategy, since Berserk strategies generally support themselves. But the temper also just gives you a free Warcry plus a free little bit of removal. This card is actually really reasonably strong, and I think discarding the power for a temper in a fire deck is absolutely something you're going to want to do. So, and you get Temper, which is a fun card that is just not quite good enough, so trading a power for a Temper at a time when you actually want it is just cool. So yeah. Yes, as people are pointing out in the art, Hot Blood Barbarian is throwing Grenatin at people. So that is the basic idea behind that card's art, and I do love the art on this card. I also like the design. I think it's really solid. Pretty cool card. We'll see. This one has some potential to get broken in half, but I don't think that it's going to be the card that does that. I think the purple elf is going to be the one that does that. We'll see. We'll see. Gibbering Jackal. Gibbering Jackal is a jackal. It's not a beast. It's a jackal. They call it the jackal. So this is a 1/1 killer for 1. This is sort of a design that seemed pretty obvious, and I was curious if they were ever going to release it and if it was going to actually be a thing that they made. It's fairly powerful. It runs along the same lines as cards like... the card is Firemane Cub, which is fun and aggressive. Fireman Cub actually gets a little bit better value most of the time, but the thing about Gibbering Jackal is that you can definitely give it weapons and make it somewhat scary, and so when you put it down, it's a thing that your opponent usually wants to kill, because if they don't kill it, then weapons make this card basically get card advantage and board advantage at the same time. So this card is, I think, a very reasonable common. You play it down, you put something on it, and then you figure out a way to kill your opponent with it. If you have some sort of trick, like if you're in Combre with Finest Hour, Gibbering Jackal is great. If you have some sort of weapon, like if you're playing Ornamental Daggers or something a little bit better like Jack's Knife, then Gibbering Jackal can really sort of start running away with the game very quickly. Like, just the straight removal on this card, combined with the fact that it leaves a body behind when you equip a weapon on it, and the fact that there are some pretty good cheap weapons out there, plus a lot of spellcraft, this card seems very playable and possibly very good. So yeah, we'll see exactly what ends up happening with Gibbering Jackal. One of the interesting things about this card is that it's very hard to nerf. There's not really much you can do with it. You could add like an influence cost. So I don't think it's overpowered, but it's curious, and if it actually did ever end up being overpowered, I wonder what they do with it. Yeah, no, it's pretty average though. Nonetheless, good card as a 1-drop, and probably the most aggressive 1-drop that Time has right now. Lucky Prospector is a little bit close. Peacekeepers Helm. I like Peacekeepers Prod. I'm not as fond of this one. This is a 1-cost 1/2 with Spellcraft 4, play Rebuke. Rebuke's not my favorite spell in the world. It leaves a unit behind, and the silence effect is kind of weird in conjunction with the stun. It does mean that you can stun units that have endurance, which is always cute. So Peacekeeper's Helm will stun absolutely anything, but a +1/+2 combined with a stun is not aggressive, and Rebuke is aggressive, and Rebuke's primary advantage in green is that it is aggressive. So this does give you some added value for a 1/2 weapon, and actually a 1-cost 1/2 weapon is not like the worst thing in the world, but that Spellcraft 4 actually seems pretty bad and unlikely to sort of influence the game in any major fashion, whereas I guess the question here is whether or not you think that the 2 health on a 1-drop is good, and I think compared to like Heavy Axe, I'm not sure I like a 1/2 any better than I like a 2/1, so this is maybe playable. There are times when you're going to want extra health on units, and 2 health is going to be better than 1, but I'm curious as to where it goes. A 3/3 Crownwatch Paladin, not the end of the world, and certainly the Rebuke is a bonus. Modular abilities are really nice. This could play, but I don't particularly like it in Ranked, and in Draft I'm tepid on it. It's fine. Alright. Robo Buddy. This one is apparently very, very big. Robo Buddy is a 5-cost 1/6 with charge with Infiltrate, Create, and Draw a 0/3 helpful Doorbot. I mean, we've got a revolving Doorbot deck now. There's so many cards with super high health that can use Accelerated Evolution to kill stuff. I don't know if Robo Buddy's even good in that deck. It costs too much, and like, I don't know what it's doing. Like, Doorbot's not helpful, and that's always been Doorbot's thing, is that he is your good friend, and now you have a new good friend, and this good friend makes more good friends, and for that reason I like this card, but I don't think this card is very good. Like, yeah, like, I can't really see all that much going on with it. You can put it in a Charge Rod deck, sure, I guess that's a thing, because then when you play Divining Rod, you get Robo Buddies, and the Robo Buddies give you Doorbots, and, like, you know, yeah. I want to see this. Okay, somebody's got to send me the first video of somebody Divining Rodding into 4 Robo Buddies. Because then they get 4 whole helpful Doorbots and they still lose. I don't know. Like, it's adorable. There's nothing wrong with an adorable and kind of useless uncommon. Yeah, like clearly revolving doorbots with accelerated evolutions is a lot of fun, but I don't know if there's any other major reason to play this card other than Shard of the Spire and accelerated evolution shenanigans. Maybe there's something we're missing here, and we'll see it eventually. It does play pretty well in draft with Stone Scar decks that are playing a lot of Grenadin, because you can put Horrifying Helm on it. So there it is, we found it. It's a 9/1 with a Horrifying Helm. That's a very surprising amount of damage, assuming I think Horrifying Helm costs 4, so you'd have to play 9 for it. This is a tough one, guys, but maybe we'll crack it. Regardless, like, there are a lot of janky combos. I just don't know if any of the combos work. It's cute, though. Cute is good. Okay, Royal Guardian. Royal Guardian is a 10 cost. Boo. We've got 3 10 costs now, so the age of Scourge of Frostome is now probably officially over as far as unstable form goes. This is a 10/10 with Tribute that says you gain health equal to the number of cards in your void, and the infiltrate is to create and draw a Hall of Lost Kings, which is the 7-cost card that, if you have 25 health or more, creates 7 5/5 Sentinels. 5/5/5 Sentinels, I think. Yeah. So this card is probably better than Hall of Lost Kings in most decks, but it also, like, I don't know. Like, I don't know if it does enough. You can get the Tribute, you can get the Infiltrate. Getting either is nice, but it's hard to say where this card belongs, because a Tribute of gain a bunch of health is not that useful at 10, and a 10/10 is not that useful by itself. The nice thing about this card is that it is actually a very, very big Sentinel that you can play off of Stirring Sand, and if you can cheat out a Royal Guardian, well, you feel a lot better about it, because first off, you're gaining a ton of health off of your discard pile. So yeah, I guess this is a legendary that's specifically designed for that deck, and that didn't occur to me when I was looking at the card in general. But this is a card that you cheat out with Grasping at Shadows or Stirring Sand, and then, like, since you have a bunch of discard stuff like Sporefolk or anything like that to sort of activate Royal Guardian, if you're using Nightfall cards, Nocturnal Observer, Herald Song, all of that stuff, then you have a pretty cool reanimate target that can do a pretty easy trick. That's a okay design for that, and it's not overpowered in any way. I would say that it is really fun to do, and it's a good, like, sort of big Timmy card. So yeah, this card is perfectly fine. I actually like the design. It's not a card that I'm personally too interested in, just because there's some mix of stats on this that don't quite work for me, but a 10 cost 10/10 with a huge Tribute. I should have realized this is definitely the card for people who like big things and doing big things, and we like big things and doing big things as well. This is just a lot of hoops to jump through to do that kind of thing. Overall, creating and drawing a Hall of Lost Kings is pretty fun. You can certainly just get a stupid amount of Sentinels out of this mess, and like, if you can find some way to give it charge, then it's even funnier. We'll probably build that deck. Royal Guardian's not high on my list of Johnny cards to craft, but it is a great Timmy card, so we'll play around with it a little bit. It'll be pretty cool. Spire Spellsword. I think this is the last one for the night. 1 cost 1/1 when you play a spell. Spire Spellsword gets +1/+1 and lifesteal this turn. It's also a Paladin Mage, which is an interesting mix of types. I don't think there are any sort of mage synergies right now. It's not a tribe, really. So being a Paladin Mage is only sort of a, like, flavor thing at this point, but it might be useful later on if we're actually looking for mages. There's not that many mages in green. I think this is the first one, so overall, I am pretty okay with this card. It is capable of doing good things with weapons at a 1-drop, so it's a reasonable 1-drop to play in sort of pauper decks. I would probably put it in Eternal Basics number 2 in a heartbeat. I'm not 100% sure, but it seems like it's pretty reasonable, and if you play a Finest Hour on this thing, then it's suddenly a 5/5 lifesteal. That's definitely a pretty good trade that happens to do very well for you. This card is like a 1/1 that every time you attack with it, your opponent is terrified of blocking. Just terrified of blocking. So most of the time it's going to stay a 1/1, but the times that it's not a 1/1, it kind of blows out. So yeah, it can be pretty cool. Also a fun card to give Berserk, just because it gets the extra lifesteal, and then if you do any sort of series of tricks, you get pretty cool shenanigans. Yeah, I would say overall this card is reasonably strong for a 1-drop. It's got a good ability on it. It's good draft card for all sorts of reasons. Finest Hour, Rapid Shot, Torch, like basically anything that buffs up Spire Spell Sword is going to get you somewhere. So you can either torch and remove your opponent's units and then attack for some life, or you can Finest Hour as a trick and get a whole bunch of life all at once, and that's pretty cool as well. Yeah, I think that's all of them. So that should be everyone. We'll just go ahead and take a quick look because there's always new ones showing up in the middle of nowhere. But looks like we're good. Yeah, so thank you guys so much for watching. We will be showing up with some more spoilers soon, assuming that Fall of Argenport doesn't launch like tomorrow. We've seen the last article spoiled out of all of the articles that we knew were going to get spoiled, so my guess is the launch is probably going to be Thursday or Friday. That'll be pretty exciting, and I'm fairly excited for it, even though I'm not going to be around for a large majority of it, or at least for the week. But once we get back, we're just going to be playing so much Fall of Argenport, and it's going to be great. So see you guys soon. Thank you so much for watching, and have a good night, everyone. Cheers. Alright. Barbarian Mage. There's a new Justice 3/3